Hello and welcome to the Seasiders preview pod. It is Friday, 10th of December. I'm Connor Hamilton, and you may have noticed we've moved from our regular Thursday slot. We had to accommodate a prestigious Christmas party at John's house that may or may not have happened, that we may or may not have attended, but John definitely didn't attend or even know it was happening, despite it taking place inside his very house. In today's show, we are previewing the mighty Blackpool's trip to Pride Park, where we play a Derby side that are playing well on the pitch, but probably suffering some unfortunate consequences off the pitch. To aid us in that process, we're joined by Richard from the Steve Bloomer's Washing Pod. Welcome, Richard.
Hi, thanks, Connor. Hi, chaps.
Hello. We're also joined by accredited journalist and Lancs Live reporter, Sean McKinley. How's it going, Sean? I noticed they haven't got rid of you quite yet.
No, give me time, mate. It's still on the probation. Can I just say, by the way, I've got this. We've got these plain orange mics from John, which are very nice, but we haven't got Seasiders Pod branded mics, which clearly Derby, obviously, in their amount of expenses that they have in podcast funds, are able to achieve.
Yeah, they're nice looking, aren't they? They're nice looking.
Yeah,
I've got
great.
my other podcast is here as well, so I've got a whole load of them.
You'll have to send us the name of your vendor and we'll see if we can use some patron funds to secure them.
I'll have a chat with our pod guru, Chris, to sort you out.
Excellent. And then back by popular demand, we're also joined by the wonderful Joe of Affers. Hello, Joe.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, very, very well, thank you. Very, very well indeed. So without further ado, let's kick us off. There's lots to talk about, probably both on and off the pitch, for Derby. And we're very blessed to have Richard with us to talk us through these things. So, Richard, just to kick us off, could you tell us a little bit more about how you became a Derby fan and also a little bit more about the Steve Bloomer's Washing Pod?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. You can probably tell from the accent I'm not actually from Derby, I'm from down south. I had a choice. My dad was a Millwall fan. My mum's side of the family were Chelsea fans, but one of my uncles and my favourite uncle when I was growing up was a Derby fan and from Derby, and it was just in the kind of mid to late 90s when we had a great team under Jim Smith. We had Dean Sturridge, Paolo Woncho, Pal Joseph Wasanovic, Igor Stimac, really great, multicultural, exciting Premier League team. And so I was a glory hunter choosing Derby County at the time, and it's been pretty much downhill ever since then. But yeah, that's how I became a Derby County fan. I had a season ticket for a number of years, particularly when I was at university in Yorkshire. And then we launched Steve Bloomer's Washing, the podcast, about I think this is our fifth or fourth season. I think 4.5 years ago we launched under Gary Rowett at the time. And the name Steve Bloomer's Washing is a play on our club anthem, which is Steve Bloomer's Watching. And I think it's a bit of a common thing for young Derby County fans to not know the words to begin with and think it's Steve Bloomer's Washing, and so that's where the name comes from.
Thank you. I must admit, when I kind of looked you up on Twitter and saw the name, I was like, I'm sure there's an excellent story here we have to know on the pod.
I should say who Steve Bloomer is, really. Steve Bloomer is our record goal scorer at Derby County. He was a kind of a pre-war player. I think they call him, some people call him the original David Beckham. I think he was the first English player to have branded boots. He played for England and all this kind of thing. So Steve Bloomer's, there's a statue of him within Pride Park as well. So if you come into the game tomorrow, look out next to the home dugout. There is a statue, a bust of Steve Bloomer in the ground.
So it's actually in the next to the dugout on the inside of the stadium.
Watching the match, yeah, exactly. Watching the pitch, yeah.
Fair enough. Let's hope the Derby fans and the Blackpool fans are a bit more lively than the bust.
Yes, let's hope so.
I thought it might be a good idea to begin off the field, because arguably the off-the-field decisions have been more impactful than events on the pitch this season. 21 points deducted by the EFL across two separate charges, first being entering administration and the second around breaching sustainability rules. Could you tell us maybe just a little bit more about that turmoil and what you see as the main causes?
Well, the main causes are very simple. A man called Mel Morris is the cause. I won't say the main cause. He is the cause of the problem at Derby County. He's been our owner since 2014. When he took over the club, we just lost in the playoff final to QPR. You may remember Bobby Zamora scoring in the final minutes after we battered them for 94 minutes. And we went on a fun ride for about 4 or 5 years after that loss under Mel Morris. He poured money into the club. Ironically, we'd got to that point in the playoff final in 2014 under Steve McLaren and the previous owners by running the club sustainably, sensibly. We were kind of, I think, quite a light team at the time in the club because we were doing things properly. McLaren had built on what Nigel Clough had done before. And Mel just kept gambling to get us promoted and spent more and more money, which at the time, I think, I'll be honest, Derby fans enjoyed it. We loved him. We just saw him pouring his money into the club, not knowing that he was at some point just going to walk away and leave us with the debt. And that's the main problem that's led us to be one of the main problems that's led us to be in administration is one of the debts we have, which is, in my opinion, completely shameful, is £27 million of HMRC debt. So he hasn't been paying PAYE, which I guess on football salaries is quite a high number. And he hasn't been paying VAT bills as well, but it's the PAYE, I think, is the bigger problem. So we've had about, I think it's 2.5, it dates back to 2019 that we basically haven't been paying the tax man. And as you may or may not know, we're the first football administration since the rules have changed regarding HMRC being preferred creditors. So anyone that buys Derby County is going to have to settle a very, very large tax bill, as I said, £27 million with HMRC before even investing in the squad, sorting out the stadium, which is still owned by Mel Morris and has a large debt leverage against it from this company, MSD Capital, which has lent lots of money to Mel Morris and Derby County over the last couple of years. And then to make matters worse, and I think which ultimately led Mel to put the club into administration, we had this the original 9-point deduction from the EFL, which probably should have happened last year, which is why Wycombe Wanderers are upset that they got relegated rather than us. So they're coming after us as well as Steve Gibson at Middlesbrough, who thinks that we stopped them from getting promoted, which I think is rubbish. So it's just a mess, and that's just kind of tip of the iceberg. And there's lots of people that can explain it more eloquent than me. But the problem is that if we are going to find a buyer for the club, which is what we need to survive, they're probably going to have to spend £50 million or so just to sort out the current mess, get hold of the stadium again, clear the debts before, as a League One club, you'd expect, before even then investing in the club and the squad to get it promoted. Is there someone willing to do that? I wouldn't, even if I had the money. So it's very worrying. And you're right to start on off the field, because the off the field stuff makes kind of the on the field stuff irrelevant at the moment. But I was at the Bristol game last weekend. The fans, in some ways, have never been more united. At games, it's as you probably know yourselves, been through a very different but equally depressing situation. It can be a rallying point, for better or worse, and the atmosphere is quite good. So hopefully, if you are at the game tomorrow, you'll hopefully have a decent atmosphere at Pride Park to enjoy.
Yeah, we hope so too. One thing that's, I think, very important to us as Blackpool fans is when we were having our troubles with the Oystons, we came to Pride Park and all the Pride Park joined us in the chants of Oyston out, which meant a huge amount to Blackpool fans. And Tim in the comments has picked up a really, really important point, which is that we want to show solidarity and support for Derby fans at this difficult time. What are the best ways for us to do this? What are the chants in the ground? Basically tell all our fans and listeners who are coming to the game, how can they best show that solidarity and support with you, the Derby fans?
It's a good question, actually, and it's that's probably one as well, which is actually, having previously said that in many ways the fan base is united in terms of getting behind the team. I wouldn't say the fan base is entirely united about. I think most people believe that Mel Morris is 100% to blame. A lot of people still blame the EFL. You'll hear plenty of chants about the EFL. I kind of agree with them to some degree. I think the EFL don't govern the game properly. I'm totally in favour of having an independent regulator put in charge, and I don't think the EFL have helped matters. But ultimately, I think the blame lies on Mel Morris's door. Mel Morris is technically already out of the club, having put the club into administration. So you don't hear much kind of anti-Mel Morris chants nowadays. At the away game, some people try to kick it off a bit, but not everyone joins in. I think there's a little bit of divided opinion about Mel. I don't quite understand that myself. For me, the blame lies at his door entirely. There is still Stephen Pearce, who is the CEO of Derby County. Mel Morris appointed him. He's still there, working with the administrators. You'll hear some chance to get Steve Pearce out of our club. I think there's no reason why he should be there. Lots of people that I know, I used to work at a club, and people I know who have worked at a club for 15, 20 years have lost their jobs. I'm not quite sure why Stephen Pearce is still picking up a salary from Derby County. So you'll hear some chance with Stephen Pearce out. That's probably about it, to be honest. And I'm quite pleased about it because the administrators are in charge. We're not the bad people have generally gone. It's about creating an atmosphere at the club now that is appealing to a buyer to buy it and to show there's a couple of buyers who have been to games, and I think Derby fans just want to show that there's still the appetite to have a club in Derby. Obviously there is. It's a big city. So we're just trying to demonstrate that there is a vibrant football club that can be taken on, however difficult that might be for the foreseeable future.
So I'm picking up three main things: raucous atmosphere to attract a new buyer, Pearce out, fuck the EFL.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's probably in that order. In my opinion, it should be in that order as well. But I will always join in with the anti-EFL chants because I think it is a shambles. But that's football all around at the moment, I think, as well.
And then finally, one last one from me before we go to Joe and Sean, who are probably more experts on the field staff. Kind of just give us a sense of, you're giving us a really good overview of what's happened and what's led Derby to this point. You know, January's coming up, January transfer window. Looks unlikely you'll find a new owner maybe by then, but you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Kind of what do you see as the next steps and the sequence of events happening over the next couple of months?
Well, I guess there's probably two scenarios. One is that the administrators originally said they wanted to announce a preferred bidder this week, by the end of this week. Obviously, this week is pretty much done. So, and they had already suggested this timeline, that deadline would pass. And I think they're aiming towards the end of this month to announce a preferred bidder. Even if they did announce a preferred bidder, I don't think they expect to get the takeover completed within January. So for me, and I think they've got some short-term funding in place to get us through until January. So it looks to be like we'll be selling players in January, which is a shame, but it's, we're going down. So if we can get some money for players, which funds the club to buy us a couple more months, so we can get the buyer kind of in and the takeover sorted, then that's obviously worthwhile doing. The really sad thing, I saw it mentioned in your notes in the running order, that we've got one of the oldest average ages. I find that bizarre. I know exactly why it is. We've got two central defenders, one's 39 and one's 37. And we've got a couple of middle-aged players, and then we've got loads of kids. You'll see tomorrow we've got loads of 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Some of them are really good. So it's just which ones we can maybe keep hold of for League One and which ones we'll be cashing in on. So I expect people like Tom Lawrence, who's on a big wage and his contract runs out in the summer. If we can get anything for him or even get him off our wage bill, I expect that might happen. He is our club captain at the moment. We've got Max Bird, Lee Buchanan and Jason Knight are the best of our young players. Jason Knight's been linked to Premier League clubs a lot. I expect him to go and us to get a fee for him. And Lee Buchanan was linked with several Championship clubs, our left back. He's currently injured though, so you won't see him tomorrow. I expect he might go in January if he's fit. And Max Bird is quite a classy, you'll see him tomorrow for sure, quite a classy kind of deep line playmaker who has attracted a lot of attention. So we'll probably lose a couple of key players, but for me, it'd be good if the new owner was in place at some point in January so they can make the decisions on their own terms and you probably get a better price for those players. But if we've got no buyer coming in, there'll be some very good players available on the cheap in January.
Yeah, it's just talking on players that you've obviously got. One player that you did have for a long time is Richard Keough, who's obviously playing for ourselves now. Sort of came in and we were all like, what's going on here? And then he's suddenly turned into this stalwart at the back that we've been missing over the past couple of weeks. He's going to be fully fit, hopefully to start tomorrow. Obviously it was a strange and again unique situation around his departure, and obviously with Tom Lawrence and I think it was Mason Bennett, the other player that was involved in that. How did Derby fans kind of view Richard Keough? I know obviously today Wayne Rooney said that he'd like him to get a good reception, and Neil Critchley said similar, but I'm not sure. It kind of seems divided on Twitter in terms of how you view him, so I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, really divided. I liked him as a player. Well, I thought he was brilliant as a player and as a captain. He always had a mistake in him, but I felt like he always made more than made up for that. Obviously the famous mistake, 2014 player final again, passes the ball straight to Bobby Zamora on the edge of the box, and the rest is history. But I thought he was a fantastic servant for Derby County. Always pretty dependable, a solid defender, good bringing the ball out. Again, when we beat Leeds in the playoff final a couple of years ago, he's the one that takes the ball out, gives it to Mason Mount, gives it to Jack Marriott, and again, the rest is history. So I really like Richard Keough. The whole night out thing will be relitigated over and over again, I'm sure. Derby chose to sack him and didn't sack the two guys that were actually driving the cars. And I think that speaks volumes about Mel Morris and his character once again. Richard Keough was obviously the highest earner of those three, I imagine. Definitely more than Mason Bennett, probably more than Tom Lawrence. But Richard Keough is the one that had a serious knee injury and wasn't going to be useful in the short to medium term. Hence, he got sacked. Is the way I think most people read into it, and that seems to be what the employment tribunal ruled in Richard Keough's favour, and then whacked another, I think, £2 million onto our debts we've still got to pay because we owe Richard Keough £2 million in wages. So another example of mismanagement from Mel. Keough you'll probably hear him get booed tomorrow. I think that's probably not really justified, but it's also modern football. Very few returning players, even if they're great servants, they often get booed more out of pantomime, I think, rather than genuine hatred to them. I think some fans do feel a lot let down by him. I certainly felt let down by him at the time and had no real sympathy for him, to be honest. He was the club captain. He was overseeing this very raucous night out when loads of them got into cars when they were offered club cars to go home. So he had a part to play, but he was certainly treated unfairly compared to the other players who were actually doing something illegal, which was drink driving. And he should have worn a seatbelt. But yeah, I won't boo him. I think he's a great player. I'm glad to see that he's performing well in the Championship again for yourselves. But I think you will hear vociferous booing of him.
This year, you've had some good results, particularly against the top teams. Brilliant win against Bournemouth. You were very, very unlucky not to come away with a victory against Fulham. You were running away with the division, well, at one stage anyway. I watched the game against Keough at Pride Park. You were very unlucky not to get something from that. But Keough scored 2 absolute wonder goals that you couldn't really do anything about. Do you think that you can achieve the impossible and stay up this season? Because your team have proven that on their day, they're capable of beating any team in this division.
Yeah, so have you guys, right? I mean, you beat Fulham and drew with Bournemouth, so it almost mirrors, doesn't it? I think, and I think, yeah, with minus 21 points, not a hope in hell. Particularly, as I said, I think the squad will only get weaker from here. With January coming, we'll lose players. I think even if we kept the current squad to achieve that 50-point mark, I think we'd be looking at kind of top 2 form, traditionally top 2 form to get 50 points now because we won 1 point. So yeah, I think it certainly isn't likely to happen. I've got no hope. Minus 12, I think we had a shot, but again, we would have had to have got a new owner in and kept the squad and added to it in January. As I said, the reality is we're not going to add to it. We're going to lose players, so we're not going to do it. But I think tomorrow should be an entertaining game. I think, looking at the way that you've played, I know that you've had a tough run of form recently. I don't think you've won since October, but you try and play football. Critchley's got you well organised. You seem like a well-drilled team. I know injuries have had an impact for you, but you seem like players come in and know what they're doing. I'm sure they have a plan for Derby. Derby like to try and play out from the back. I know that pressing is a big part of your game, so I think it could be an entertaining game with plenty of goals. I certainly hope so, because I don't get up to many games at Pride Park at the moment. So I think we won't pick up enough points against teams around us. I think similar to yourselves, we struggle against more physical Route 1 teams. We try and play football. We haven't got much of an organised pressing style of our own, to be honest, which makes us a bit vulnerable, I think. So, I don't have any confidence we're going to get promotion form and get out of the relegation zone.
Yeah, obviously, you kind of like you were saying, there's a real mix of type of player in that squad, simply because it kind of needs must at some stages. A name that I saw Wayne Rooney talking about was Luke Plange. Now that's not a player that I've really heard of before, but he seems to be making noises that he potentially might start the game, and he's someone that he thinks that he'll be able to rely on a bit more later on in the season. So could you kind of give us a bit of a feeling on what to expect from him, and obviously any other key players that you think could potentially make the difference for you?
Yeah, so Luke Plange is another one of those youngsters that have come through and Rooney's giving game time to. To be honest, I've not seen a lot of him. He came on at Bristol City last weekend for his debut, and he did look good. He had a bit of a presence about him. I thought his movement looked sharp. He's been banging goals in for the under-23s. So we're kind of crying out for some more presence up front, which isn't Colin Kazim-Richards. CKR does a good job for us. Obviously, he's one of those other players in their mid to late 30s. So we can't rely on him all the time. And he seems to be a little bit out of favour. I don't know if it's a fitness issue, but Rooney hasn't been starting him much at all. And we've been trying Tom Lawrence in kind of a false nine position that kind of blows hot and cold a little bit with Lawrence. He's a brilliant player when he's on the ball. I just don't know if the false nine's good for him. So I'd be interested to see Plange start tomorrow. He's not a huge striker, but he's got more about him than a kind of a fox in the box. We also had another young player called Jack Stretton, who I really like, who's been who was previously banging goals in as well for the academy and the under-23s, but he's a bit smaller and hasn't got as much physical presence, so he gets bullied a little bit on the ball. Plange is a bit bigger than him. I don't think he's quite as sharp in the box, but I think, to be honest, I haven't got much to tell you about him because I haven't seen much of the academy play, but I'll be looking forward to seeing if he does get a start in a more classical number 9 role. Derby need that kind of player, whether or not he can take his chance. Jack Stretton came in end of last season, started this season, and he had a couple of good games, but really unlucky. He hit the bar from close range where it looked easier to tap it in, and he just never quite got started. And then he picked up a niggle, and now he's out of the team, and now Plange is coming in to compete for that spot. So excited to see him. The other player I definitely would suggest keep an eye on is Liam Thompson, small midfielder, quite good in the ball, but also really scrappy. Really will harry people, good at intercepting the play and neat and tidy on the ball too. So look out for him. I can't remember what number he is, but it's quite a high squad number because he's only just made his first appearance. And then the other youngsters, Max Bird, Jason Knight, who you might be more familiar with, have been in the team for a couple of years. Really good players, and would fully expect them to be playing Championship at least next year. Jason Knight, certainly. People like Burnley and Newcastle were looking at him in the summer.
Excellent. No, just finding the unmute button. So you've mentioned a lot about the key players on the pitch there. What about the man in the dugout? Obviously, this is Wayne Rooney's first managerial appointment. Obviously, quite a difficult one. What do you make of the job he's been doing?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Last season, couldn't stand him, thought he was absolutely rubbish, wanted him gone in the summer. I thought he was extremely lucky to keep us up on the last day of the season. We didn't even win the game. So I was quite keen for him to be moved on in the summer. But I'm quite happy to say that he's proved a lot of people, including myself, wrong this season. I think he had most of pre-season, we had 9 registered players in the team, and it's only on the eve of the season we got people like Curtis Davis, Phil Jagielka, Ravel Morrison, Sam Baldock signed up to short-term contracts so we could beef up the squad. He's mostly dealing with, as I said, 35-year-olds plus and 19-year-olds. That's kind of the makeup of the squad. So he didn't really get much preparation, and he's got us playing. Last season the football was turgid. Like, he couldn't get his own style going, so he played really, really awful football, and it wasn't even effective. This season, we're actually playing some good football. We really do lack from having a goal scorer. We're not clinical in the final third, obviously, otherwise we'd have more points than we do. But there are signs that he's got a playing style, and I think the players obviously are with him. It would be easy for the players to have down tools this season. Lots of them are, as I said, lots of them are on short-term contracts. There's no prospect really of us staying up, and there's no prospect for many of them staying at the club in the short to medium term. So he obviously has built an atmosphere there and a bit of a siege mentality, and he's got them playing some quite nice football. And most importantly for me, a lot of those young players that I've mentioned have developed under him. Last year they weren't developing under him at all because it was a real tough battle. This year they seem to be benefiting from what he's trying to do. So I think there are signs of a good manager in there. And whether or not he'd be the right person to be our manager in League One, and if a new owner would want him, remains to be seen. And he's on a big wage, I imagine. So I'm not sure. I think I'd probably want us to have someone who's well versed in League One or even League Two, who's a kind of up and coming manager. But I can't fault him this season. To be honest, he's been given an impossible job, and he's done a lot better than most of us expected us to be doing.
Fair enough. So I don't think any Blackpool fans are coming into this game assured of victory, despite what's going on. Be interesting to go around the room now and get score predictions. Richard, kind of as our guest, would you like to kick us off?
Well, I have to go for a Derby win. I do think there'll be goals. Can I see us scoring 3 goals though? I don't know. Maybe I'll go 2-2. I think there'll be goals, and maybe I'll go 2-2 because I can't see us bagging 3.
All right, 2-2 draw.
I talked myself out of a Derby win there.
Yeah, I know. I was interested. When you said 3 goals, I was like, you've got one of the lowest kind of expected goals in the league. Sure, that might be ambitious, but hey, if you did it against the top teams in the league, there's no reason you couldn't do it against us. Joe, what's your take on the match?
I was going to say Richard clearly hasn't seen us shoot in the last couple of games. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Yeah, I'd be happy if we just scored a goal. That'd be a start. Build from there. Yeah, like you say, Connor, I don't think this will be an easy game. The league table is a farce because, in reality, I think Derby are only 3 or 4 points behind us if you take away the points deduction. If it weren't for that, there'd be one of them cluster of teams that are in with an outside chance of the playoffs. I'd be happy with a point. I'm going to go with 1-1. We're finally going to get a goal, and it's going to be Richard Keough in the 90th minute.
I wouldn't argue against that. I could see it happening.
Limbs. Sean, as well, I said, you wouldn't be limbs in the away end anymore now that you've got your fancy job in the press box. What you kind of using your crystal ball and media access, what do you think the score to be?
Yeah, to be fair, if Richard Keough scores a goal in the last minute, my professionalism is straight out the window, I'll have you know. But I feel like this is going to be the game where we kind of turn it round now, I think. I'm sure we'll come on to later, discussing more in depth, but I just think we have played well in the build-up, and I think he will probably tweak a couple of things up top, bring in a couple of players.
You've been saying this for 3 weeks now.
I know, but it's got to happen at some point, hasn't it? We look good in the build-up, and it's like you can't keep putting the ball into dangerous areas over and over consistently and then not scoring goals. It's just natural. We're going to go. I'm going 2-0 for us because I think we'll make a couple of tweaks that might make the difference. And as you were saying before, a low-intensity Derby side who play from the back may potentially play into our hands in the press, like you were saying before. So I'm going to go 2-0 to us, be a bit confident.
All right. I think you're absolutely mad to suggest that we're going to score 2 goals after recent form. But I do agree with you that you're going to win, and I do agree that we'll probably keep a clean sheet. I'm not. I look at the underlying numbers of this Derby attack, and I don't feel too threatened. So I'm going to say it'll either be a 1-1 draw or a 1-0 win, and I'm leaning towards the 1-0 Blackpool win at the moment. Feeling the positivity. Got another 1-1 in the comments as well. So we'll have to wait until tomorrow to see who's right. I'm hoping it's myself and Sean, obviously. But equally, Richard, we won't have too hard feelings if Derby do manage to get some points and, that leads them closer to the impossible dream of staying in the division. We do wish
Well,
Derby all the best.
You guys have got a better chance of staying up. I think the points are much more useful to you than they are to us. As I said, we've given up on staying up. And a good friend of mine is a Blackpool fan I used to work with, so I've got a small soft spot for Blackpool. So I do hope you guys stay in the division.
Excellent. Right. Well, now this is the time of the show where we move on to the trip to memory lane that is They Played for Both, where we discuss some of the many players who have played for both our illustrious clubs. We've obviously mentioned Richard Keough and had a bit of an in-depth chat about him. He's obviously one. But there's a couple more ones being shouted out in the chat. Andy Garner is one. Yep. Sean Barker, the big defender. Tom Ince as well, who I assume...
Tom Ince, I think he joined Derby after his 6-year Inter Milan stint, didn't he? I'm pretty sure that's how it works out. No?
Well, I'm just wondering, did he get the job at Derby because his dad was manager at the time?
No. Where did we sign him? Where did we actually sign Tom Ince
Hull, I
from?
think, because he went to Hull from us. Yeah,
we had him. We had him on loan to start with. Absolutely fantastic. Again, he's a weird one that divides opinion for Derby fans. Good Lord, what would I give to have that Tom Ince back? I know he hasn't done great for Stoke, but he was absolutely fantastic for Derby County, and he was a great winger to watch. I know he scored bags of goals for you as well.
Yeah, he was great. He was great with the stint. I think it's just obviously at the time it was like his dad was manager. We lost, I think, 6 or 7 games on the bounce. He ended up trying to fight a fan at Barnsley away in his final game while we were in the middle of the January window, whilst his dad was manager, his dad was then basically acting as his agent and trying to flog him to any club that would buy. So
to be fair, that game against Barnsley, we did spend 90 minutes singing "Please." That
is still my favourite away game. There was about 80 people there in that Barnsley away end. The tunnel's obviously right there. Barry Ferguson's holding back Tom Ince. You've got like Tango Man there giving Paul Ince grief, just back from the dead. It's just that was peak Blackpool. That was peak Blackpool madness.
The banter ears.
Yeah.
Oh, Tom Ince, those were the bad old days.
Has anybody mentioned Gary Rowett in the chat?
Yeah, so no. When did he play for Blackpool?
Yeah, I remember him as a kid. I think it might have only been on loan, but he definitely spent a couple of months at Blackpool, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe he was on loan from us.
Maybe, possibly.
He was on loan from Everton, Wikipedia is telling me, and he then went on to Derby County.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, well, he's a bit of he's a well-liked player at Derby, and he's a well-liked coach when he joined us. He wasn't so well-liked when he left us for Stoke, but I think there's another story behind that. But yeah, he played for us. Yeah, he played for us in those years I mentioned that I became a Derby County fan, 1995, 1998. I had him in my sticker book.
Robert Inshaw's a good chat there in the chat. His 30-minute spell at Bolton away for us with shorts that were too long for him.
It's bizarre, these details you remember about the players.
It's always the worst, I remember.
I'm surprised one that hasn't been mentioned yet, skipping over the bad old days and going back to the good, is obviously DJ Campbell. Our Premier League top scorer. DJ Campbell also played for Derby. Any memories of him, Richard?
One that stands out, that was in the Nigel Clough days when we were a very inconsistent team. Sometimes we looked like we actually might challenge for the playoffs, and sometimes we looked like we'd get relegated a week later. And DJ Campbell came, I think it was just one, maybe 3 or 6 month loan spell. But he did score. I do remember him scoring a 94th minute equaliser against West Brom. After they'd got what they thought was a winner in the 92nd. I think Graham Dorran scored it. And I actually used to be the mascot for Derby, so I was rammied around that day, and it was a good atmosphere when DJ Campbell banged in that goal in the 95th, 96th minute.
So we're gonna go back a second here because you missed out of your interview. You weren't like a kid mascot or one of those guys who like gets given a mascot ship as like a stag do like prank. You were the actual mascot inside the ram costume.
I was the ram. I was rammied around at Bloomfield Road. Yeah, I was there. Did
What are the facilities like as a mascot? Do you get like a special VIP suite
That-
with like
that is a
bottled
story.
water?
Yeah, that is a story actually. So this is quite dodgy, I think. So this was 2009. I was only for one season, 2009, 2010, and we played you as a Tuesday night game. And yeah, so I was given my changing room was the same changing room as the actual, as you mentioned, kid mascots. So that was a bit weird. So I like to wait for them all to get changed, and I could then get changed. I like holding the door closed. It's quite hard to hold the door closed when you're trying to put on a big ram outfit. And I had no one to help me do up my glove, a furry glove. And Nigel Clough actually helped me do up the last part of my costume because he was the only person there sat outside. It was right outside the away changing room, and I did a penalty shootout on your pitch before the game with some kids. I can't remember the score that night. I got a feeling it was a draw or we lost. It was 2009, 2010. I've got a really bad... One of the things that I'm famous for in our podcast is I got an awful memory about Derby
0-0,
County
I
stuff
think it
even.
was.
That sounds about right for that season. We finished about 17th, I think, that season.
Well, it's probably right if you can't remember. I'd be worried if you said you made like you couldn't remember a 5-4 thriller. That's probably a better sign.
I've got another played for both.
Go on, then, Joe.
Paul Dickoff.
Now you're just saying rude words.
Paul Dickoff, that was, I think, the same time that DJ Campbell was at Derby. So yeah, we quite liked Paul Dickoff. He did a good job for us. It was towards the end of his career when he was at Derby, and he's a workhorse. He was definitely still smoking like 20 a day, I think. But he was a workhorse, and at that time under Nigel Clough, that's all we really had, and all we expected was just players to work hard because there wasn't much style of football going on.
I think his goals the first season that we were in the Championship first time around probably helped contribute us staying up. I can remember he came in towards the end of the season, played about 15, 16 games and scored about 7 or 8 goals, really instrumental in keeping us up that first season.
Did Theo Robinson ever play for you?
I don't know. My memory's appalling. So
Don't think so.
He's played for almost every other club in the EFL.
And he left us out. Shocking.
How have we not got him in like a 3-month deal in one of our January turnovers or under Riga or something?
How did he miss us out? We missed the trick there.
I'm shocked we didn't sign him in the Premier League season. It would have been absolutely fit in with 20-stone Andy Reid and Sergei Kornilenko.
Right. Well, a good mix there of the bad old days with Tom Ince, the good old days with DJ Campbell, with some interesting interludes to the life of a championship mascot as well. I think that's the first time I've ever had a mascot on the podcast. Sean, do you reckon with your new status and role you could get Bloomfield Bear on?
I'll try my best.
There we go. We'll hold you to that. Right, now, moving on, we'll move into the final section with Richard around head-to-head, where we have a look at some of the past games, some of the memorable occasions, and again, do a bit more reminiscing. So I will just bring my screen up there. So out of all the times we've played each other, Swansea has the advantage. They've won 31 times to Blackpool's 23. First played each other in 1907, befitting the historic nature of our clubs. But as you can see, the last result between the sides was a 4-0 loss at Pride Park in 2015. Any of these games spring to mind?
I was going to say before the pod, I had no recollection of Derby away, and I was wondering why. And then as you look down that list, it's clear that I've wiped it from my own mind for my own sanity because we've conceded 13 goals in the last 3 games at Pride Park.
So we're due a win, is what I'm hearing.
Yes,
we're going to win because we're overdue a win.
I remember 2 good games at Pride Park, to be fair.
Boxing Day?
Yeah, was that the Brett Ormerod double?
Probably.
Yep, 2-0 win on
2009.
Boxing Day 2009.
And I remember a penalty shootout win in the League Cup.
That would have been in 2007, 28th
Yeah,
of August.
our first season up. I think it was one of them penalty shootouts that went on forever as well. I think we ended up winning like 11-10. I think
And that
everybody
was-
took one.
Yeah, so was that the start of our relegation from the Premier League season, August 2007? Yeah, it must have been. So that was when we were the worst team in history. So we even got knocked out by Blackpool in the League Cup that season. Great.
Newly promoted Blackpool to the Championship. Yeah.
And I need to issue an apology before it comes to bite me in the butt. Because I didn't check my script for typos, somebody's correctly pointed out I had Swansea there. And I know people were furious to me for calling Sheffield United just Sheffield on the pod. So I cannot imagine the reaction from accidentally calling Derby Swansea.
I did spot it, but I didn't want to say anything because you're in such a good flow.
It's all right. No, don't ever be afraid to point out my mistakes.
I didn't spot it, so.
So I'd like to issue an upfront apology now, and I hope the internet comment section is kind on me. At least kinder than it was when I called Sheffield United Sheffield. Right, any other interesting matches there?
Well, the Boxing Day defeat, the 2-0 defeat, when you beat us, defeat for us in 2009. That was when I was Rami, and that was I had all my family in the suites, in the posh seats for Boxing Day because they all came up to spend Christmas in the Peak District, and it was for some of them it was the only time I've ever been to see Derby County play. It was an awful game, obviously, and we lost 2-0. So that's not a particularly happy memory of Christmas time.
Did you have a special Christmas costume for that game as Derby the Ram? Rami the Ram?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I did have any kind of hat or anything. Low budget.
Low budget operation. Never mind.
You're right there, Sean.
You can't believe his look. He's got actual mascot on the podcast. He's overjoyed.
Just imagine Carl Oyston funding like a Christmas Bloomfield Bear.
You would definitely.
I'm surprised he funded a mascot at all.
Yeah, he probably didn't. He was probably just part of it at one stage.
Probably gave him an extra lump of coal.
Yes.
He'd set up a little Santa's grotto, give out loads of presents. Have all the children come sit on his lap.
I think that's a win.
Oh.
Better be careful.
I know. We need to be
moving swiftly on Derby County.
Right. Stop sharing my screen. Before we get Richard into potential legal trouble, we'll let him go, and then we'll go into our Blackpool team selection as always. Thank you very, very much for joining us, Richard. It's an absolute honour to have you not only guiding us through Derby's financial troubles, but also an ex-mascot on the pod. I think that's the Seasiders pod first. So thank you so, so much for your insights and stories.
Pleasure to meet you, chaps, and good luck for the rest of the season. Hopefully I won't be coming on your pod next year because you won't be down in League One with us. So take care and safe travels tomorrow.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Richard.
Cheers.
Okay, then. Apparently John's already had remonstrations from our legal team. So we better move swiftly on to the formation picker, which won't get us into trouble with the lawyers, but will get us into trouble with the fans, as always.
I'll do a quick injury roundup while you're getting the thing on.
Yeah, well, I'll get the screen up. There we go.
So we've got Richard Keough back fully fit. Obviously, he was on the bench at Luton. Just sort of easing him back in. Didn't feel a need to bring him in. I'm sure we do now. That's obviously besides the point. Medine potentially trained yesterday and today. Obviously, the press conference was Thursday morning, and he thought potentially he might train later on Thursday. But whether he did or not, we don't know. And that'll make him eligible for the squad. But I very much doubt that he would start, and I don't think they would risk it. But it was a separate issue to his other groin injury that he's had in the past. It was just that he tweaked it. So it wasn't anything to do with the previous injury they had there. Kevin Stewart back in training early next week. Potentially would have been today, but I think it was more going to be early next week. So back into light training. So we may see Kevin Stewart as a potential option in the next couple of weeks, which is always positive. And Garbett and Ollie Casey are back in training as well, which is another positive.
So Kevin Stewart might be back this week.
Yep.
How long until he gets injured again?
Probably if he's starting training on Monday, maybe, don't know what time does training finish. No, do you know what I would? This is the thing, because I love watching Kevin Stewart play. I think he's class, and just it would be amazing if he could just go a few months without, even if it's just a few months till the end of the season, just to give us that extra midfield option until obviously next season when Ward and Virtue come back, and January when we've got the options in. It would be class.
Yeah, Kevin, we've got Gretson the Iceman and Kevin Stewart the Glassman in our squad. We move on to squad selection. We can have the usual formation debate. We've tended to go for a 4-2-3-1 in recent weeks. Should we stick with that, or should we go to the wonderful 4-4-2?
I would stick with the 4-2-3-1. I think that our actual general play is fine, and I don't think the system is the issue. It's simply a case that we've got multiple players that aren't showing the quality that we know they can possess in the final third. So we've kind of just been unlucky in a sense that every single player's currently snatching at chances at the same time. They're never all going to be consistent week in, week out, but they've kind of all come into this vein of form at the same time. But I think generally the system works well, and we get the ball into good areas quite often, and we're playing well at sort of playing through the lines, playing through the thirds, playing into pressure in central midfield as well. So 4-2-3-1 for me.
Okay. In the comments, it looks like Steve agrees with you. He's got quite a detailed lineup there, but it looks like a 4-2-3-1. Both David and John are going for a 4-4-2. Joe, what are your thoughts?
If Medine was capable of starting, I would have gone for a 4-4-2, but he isn't, so 4-2-3-1.
Okay. We'll shift to a 4-2-3-1 then. John is firing the lawyers and instructing them not to ask on our behalf as we speak. We all backed Maxwell to come back into goal last week. He then maybe didn't have a great performance. Critchley said in his interviews, I believe, that we now have two potential number ones. Do we stick with Maxwell and continue to trust the faith, or do we go back to Grimshaw?
I'd keep him. I don't think you can drop him after that performance. Not that it was a good performance. I just think it'd destroy his confidence, really. I think you've got to give him at least another game to prove himself. He's come into the game maybe a little bit rusty. I know it's boring to keep harping on about it, but the weather was atrocious. Made coming for crosses very difficult. And again, that first goal, I don't think he was too much at fault. I think Husband grabbing Dale by the scruff of the neck and throwing him onto the fella at the back post wasn't very helpful. But yeah, I'd stick with Maxwell. He's never let us down in the past. He had a bit of an iffy game on Saturday, but he's human. When a goalie has a bad game, it's more easily a spot, isn't it, than if a midfielder has a few misplaced passes. It tends to bite you in the butt a little bit more if it's a keeper. So, yeah, I'd keep with Maxwell.
Yeah, I'd do the same. I think with that, I think his one weakness since he's arrived is perhaps judging the flight of the ball when it's kind of right in there in the mix on sort of the 4 or 5 yards out from goal from set pieces. I think he kind of does lose flight of the ball sometimes, but the weather really didn't help their conditions, obviously, and the first game back after an injury spell. But as we've said, that's the first time that I can remember Chris Maxwell sort of letting us down in a sense in terms of a goal. So it's 2 years he's been here. He's got a much longer shelf life to sort of go back on, to look back on and see what he's done to earn the shirt. And unless he now spends the next 3 or 4 matches doing the exact same thing, then I wouldn't be playing Grimshaw for me, as much as Grimshaw's been an excellent stand-in. And as we said previously, probably too good a stand-in to the point where he might end up getting offers in January to move on and get first team football.
Well, if you can make a profit on a goalkeeper, profit on a second choice goalkeeper, that's arguably no bad thing. So I'll put Maxwell in. quite a few comments in the fans saying they don't blame Maxwell. I think the marking was the issue for the first goal.
Totally
Understand
agree.
why.
I think it's a bit of
it was
both,
a
isn't it?
difficult game.
That first goal, it's a bit of both because obviously if Maxwell initially loses the flight, if he judges that better, then he either stays on his line and stands at the back post, or he claims it. So I think it's a bit of both, really. Structure from set pieces and Maxwell losing the flight of the ball.
Okay. And we mentioned Husband grabbing Dale by the scruff of the neck and arguably, at least in my view, marking the wrong man. I think a certain amount of blame for that first goal has to lie with him. Despite that, he's put in some really, really good performances recently. I think has begun to turn around the kind of fan opinion that he can actually be a quality centre-back. But you've also got Richard Keough, another fan favourite, against his old club, potentially coming back in. And that feels like a real positional battle for me around who's going to partner Marv. Sean, do you have any preference on how you think that small matter of the squad makeup should be decided?
Yeah, I think it's Keough and Marv every day of the week for me. I think they were just the perfect partnership. We obviously, me and yourself have kind of gone in depth really about how that partnership balances so well, and the reading of each other's game really suits us, and it helps us sort of take more risks in a defensive sense as well, and be more assured in doing that. I said kind of the second goal, I said on the reaction show, I think that perhaps Husband would have probably reacted to that better at left back than Reece James would have, and I think that sometimes Husband's positional sense does feel like it's a fullback playing centre half at times against teams that are high pressing and more nimble in their work rather than. I think he defends his 18-yard box perfectly well against physical sides, but when you're against a side that's more technical, I think he struggles a little bit at centre half, which is absolutely fine because he's not a centre half. So I would put Husband at left back and I'd drop Reece James and I'd have Keough and Marv partnering at centre half.
Fair enough.
Absolutely agree. It's got to be a points per game with James Husband at left back.
What, PPG WJHALB?
Precisely. That's why we've been struggling for the past few games with Keough out. It's nothing to do with the who's playing in the middle. It's the lack of Husband at left back.
Okay. So that's three of the back line sorted nominally at least. If you want to listen back to the reaction show and hear more from Sean on that point, you can obviously find that on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to hear more around the piece I wrote and Sean referenced around what makes Keough and Ekpiteta such a good partnership, explained using the metaphor of cats and dogs, you can find that on the UTMP blog as well.
I do like that. I do like the fact that you lulled us into a false sense of security of promoting the pod there, only to then go and promote your own work at the end of it.
I know. I figured I should do a little bit of balance there. At least attempt to kind of balance
it's
my
quite right.
media whorishness out.
Yeah.
But oh well. John agrees with Husband at left back and suggests Gabriel at right back. Any objections among the panelists?
100% agree.
Yeah, I'd agree with Gabriel. I think Sterling was fine defensively. Perhaps maybe he could have done a little bit better at dealing with the cross of the second goal against Luton, but Sterling's clearly a really good right back. But I think if you're looking at our attacking balance, I think that at the moment we would, if we had Gabriel driving at the byline, it'd open up a lot more space for us in central areas because he does drag a full-back out wide to go and deal with him a lot more than Sterling probably does. And that, again, opens up space. Just any sort of space at all at the moment to feed a decent ball into the attackers would be welcome. So I think Gabriel's a good option there for this game.
Yeah, I think particularly with what Richard was saying around they play reasonably direct football, not necessarily the prettiest of stuff. I'm expecting maybe we'll have a lot of the ball and a lot of the ball high up the pitch, which I think was when a rampaging fullback like Gabriel becomes quite handy for all the reasons you've just described, Sean. Our double pivot. Wintle and Dougal have obviously been the obvious shouts in weeks past. Looks like Kevin Stewart you say he is back, Sean, or
No,
will
it'll be
back
so
next
he'll be
week?
back early next week, but that's just light training. So I would imagine he may not even be fit for the week after. It may be that we take it slowly with him, to be honest. Obviously, given his injury record as well.
Okay. And obviously, now that we're not playing Reece James at left back, we can obviously slot him into central midfield as well, which I know you're all a fan of. I'm just joshing. I'll put down Wintle and Dougal.
And again, I'll just reinforce what I thought is that Wintle had one of his best games in a Blackpool shirt against Luton. I thought that he sort of had the license to go forward a bit more than he normally does. I thought he was constantly feeding balls into good areas, which it's when you're under the cosh like that and things aren't going your way, it's very easy to sort of get frustrated and just play the simple passes and run the game down. But I thought that consistently he was sort of taking up the mantle in the second half, especially to try and keep us going up the pitch and keeping that tempo going, which was important. And as I said on that reaction pod, I'd be absolutely devastated if he goes. I think he's at the moment and probably consistently over the season one of our best, probably top 3 players this season.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. I think in the Luton game we saw an aspect of his game we hadn't necessarily seen before, which was the ability to turn, kind of run and just like dribble and run away from the pressing defender, which I'd not seen. I knew he was a great passer of the ball. I knew he got into good positions, but I hadn't seen him kind of win those one-on-one kind of duels almost, and was very, very impressed by that.
And I think obviously when Critch is talking about that we're playing, he thinks we're playing well in our build-up play. I think that's the key for me, is what he means when he's saying he wants to build through the thirds. It's having the bravery to sort of, when under pressure, be calm under pressure and as you say, sort of turn the midfielder that's marking you and drive forward. And I think it'd be interesting to see going forward if we did bring in a defensive midfielder, whether he would go with a midfield with 1 holding and 2 more advanced central midfielders, and it gives Wintle more of a license to get forward then, because I think generally we're starting to deal with playing under pressure, playing in tight areas a lot more in central midfield, and that's what I was getting frustrated when we were just sort of playing direct balls and bypassing the midfield completely. I thought we were wasting the talents in there, and now we're starting to use it. Once the clinical edge comes up top, I think we'll really enjoy watching us play.
No, completely agree. We're moving on to the attacking 4 now. The fantastic 4, potentially, hopefully. Joe, where would you like to start? Who's your first name on the team sheet for our attacking options?
I want to do it in a bit of a cockeyed order. I want to go up top. Up top, I'd play Lavery, purely for his ability to get behind defenders and the runs that he makes. I love Jerry, but I think he's quicker than Jerry, and I think he's slightly cleverer, the little runs that he makes, and he's also got that tenacity and engine that Jerry has as well. So, yeah, I'd have Lavery starting up top, but that's just me.
I think as well, you've got Curtis Davis and Phil Jagielka at centre half. If you've got Lavery stretching the defence on the turn, wanting to open up space, so that more importantly as well, not even feeding the ball through to Lavery, but also opening up space for the attacking midfielders on the edge of the box to sort of better utilise the ball than they have been doing. I think we'd be onto a winner there. Really, didn't think it, like I said before, I think a low intensity side that build out from the back is made for a game for Lavery, really.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with you. I just remember seeing a chart, and I know football isn't played on charts, but I remember seeing a chart a few weeks back which compared all the Blackpool players' attacking output. And like you had all the players kind of here, and then like Shane Lavery like over here, like just on his own in literally a league of his own. And we've seen how impactful he can be before he got injured, and we can only hope he can recapture that form. I'm going to be a bit rogue now and jump into the queue and suggest my own player at right winger. And I'm really feeling good about Josh Bowler for this game. I think Josh Bowler cutting on the inside, Jordan Gabriel on the outside against a Derby team that defends deep, doesn't press, needs to be broken down. I feel really good about that. I feel like this could be Josh Bowler's game where he recaptures that form he's been missing over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I think I mean, if it's going to be it's a great game to start Bowler because of the sort of opposition that we're playing and him being direct. And I think there's less of an emphasis on him having to be perfect off the ball and sort of coming back in numbers. I don't think we're necessarily going to get outnumbered in midfield. I don't think we're necessarily going to be in for a sort of a technical battle that we have been in recent weeks. So I agree that it's probably a great game for Bowler to play, and I really wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. I really wouldn't be surprised if he has a good game, but I'd really like to try Owen Dale on the right hand side because I think he's got the best delivery out of the wingers in terms of quality consistently. I think that Josh Bowler just hasn't had it for never really in terms of quality delivery into the box consistently, feeding good balls in. So yeah, I would like to try Owen Dale there, but as you say, I really wouldn't be surprised if Bowler starts and has a good game.
We're having a shout in the comments for cousin CJ. I think, guys, if even I've given up on cousin CJ, it may be one to let that one go.
I tell you what, though, I think he's a fantastic option to have on the bench against tiring legs in the second half.
Yeah, tiring 39 and 37-year-old legs, as we heard as well.
I'd certainly at least have him on the bench.
Okay. I wish you could pick a bench on this software. Maybe that's the next use of Patreon funds to see if we can get some custom squad picker, fully customized to the squad with bench options as well. All right.
Can I do the shout for the number 10?
Go for it.
I'd go Sonny Carey. I'm finally giving Tom what he's wanted all along. I like Carey, but I just find it is funny when Tom, like every 5 minutes, is telling us how great he is, and he's not wrong, to be fair, because whenever he's played, he's been really good, and he looks lively. And
apart from the one game that he actually started, bless him.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I think, again, it's a good game to give players that haven't had much of a chance or are on the cusp of doing something. The full 90 against the side, as I said, with low intensity. Sonny Carey he surprised me with how physical he is. He's happy to get involved in that side of the game.
Yeah, he likes to get stuck in, doesn't he?
Off the ball, his positional sense is very good, but he's also a threat on the edge of the box and in and around those areas. And obviously, as we'll come on to, if we have Keough on the left-hand side alongside that, I think it's a good interchange of a front four, to be honest. And I think that if you've got constant movement, you've got two players there, especially in Keough and Carey, that are clever in their movement, and they'll always find that yard of space, but they'll also contribute off the ball as well.
Okay. So, quick detour here, just because it's a question that's popped into my brain. Sean, what is happening with Besley Barlow at the moment?
Nothing, essentially. You're never going to get told anything, so he's never going to play again for us, is he? Let's be honest. So I think that's pretty much nailed on at this point after being so long out. So yeah, and for me, he was crap when he played. So I know he had a great spell at Crawley, but I didn't really rate him anyway. In the games
we'll always have West Brom in the FA Cup at home. His crowning moment.
I was going to say I'd put TJJ above Besley Barlow, so yeah, no.
Fair enough. So you're going to go for Keough on the left over TJJ?
I am. It's a harsh decision, to be honest. So, yeah. To be fair, do you know what? If there was a game where TJJ could possibly turn up, it's this one. But he's not going to be in the squad, is he? So.
Okay. Do you reckon he'll go back to Arsenal in January and get recalled for lack of playing time?
Yes, definitely, because I think that they rate him a lot higher than we rate him at this moment. Whether the stock is going to be low, like I've said before, I just think it's the wrong club for him. I think he'd be fine in a team that gives him more of a license to roam off the ball himself and not have to be involved in a high press or be involved in the off the ball side of the game as much. And it really allows him to free himself up, because I think he's got great movement off the ball. I just don't think he matches what we want to play, and I think potentially Critch saw the technical side of him, which looks good, and is in terms of his movement as well, and thought potentially could mould him into the off the ball side of things as well, and it's just not happening. So, and obviously his composure. For me, what let him down most was obviously his composure when he had opportunities, and he just snatched at chances a bit, which I think we're all culpable of at the moment. But yeah, he'll definitely go back, I think.
Interesting. Okay. I think it's really interesting. Josh Bowler, ex-Everton, played for Hull, been quite a decent signing so far. Shane Lavery, I think, was also ex-Everton, youthful player going back and playing in Northern Ireland. Very good signing. TJJ, signed from Arsenal. Maybe not been quite a good signing as his reputation led us to believe. Does this prove that Northern players are better than Southern players?
Clearly,
Answers
yes.
on a postcard, please.
Yes.
I'm
actually Googling where Josh Bowler is from.
I might actually do this.
He's from Surrey.
Article.
So he's from the southeast. So,
all right, how do I drop him? No, I'm joking. All right, I might do that as a fuller piece of analysis later. We've got one more position to fill on the left wing. We've had a fairly harsh decision to drop TJJ and not include him there. So I assume it's going to be Keshi there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good-looking team, That's a really good-looking team. So
I still prefer
you're guaranteed about 5 of them won't play.
I do think, like I say, though, this is a good chance to mix things up a little bit. But I do think the system generally that we've been playing is fine. Just confidence, isn't it, up top, and composure.
Yeah, I think tomorrow's going to be the day Critchley unleashes his 3-2-3-2 formation that he's having to sleep all this time.
We shall see. We shall see. It's no use predicting what Critch is going to do. I still think the club should institute some form of half-time prize. But well, take that off. Maybe the people in the new Heineken experience will get that.
The best I've done, I managed to get 10 out of 11 once. I was pretty pleased with that.
Steve says this is the exact team I went for. If we just listened to him at the start of the podcast, we're going to save ourselves 25 minutes. Sorry about that, Steve. Maybe sign him up for the next pod. He could help us get here a lot quicker. All right. Well, that is the team against Derby. As usual, put it on socials in the WhatsApp for people to digest and praise and adore as they normally do. We look forward to seeing many of you at the game or on social media reaction to it during or after. Have a wonderful and safe travels if you're going down. I was trying to figure out how to stop sharing. There we go. And finally, up the pool.
Up the pool.